Bridget KerMorris, welcome to So Money. It's great to finally meet you. I'm such a fan.
Farnoosh, I am thrilled to be here. Thank you for asking me on the show. This is awesome.
It is very self-indulgent of me to have you on So Money on this topic. I am in it. I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old who I guess is technically a tween. She's entering the middle years. I don't know, depending on how I guess 11 is when tweens really start, but she is like 9 going on 29. So before we get into all of it, let's talk about your background. I find your career journey really, really fascinating. You started out as an attorney, I believe.
Yeah.
And then you became a therapist, and now you are known as this middle school parenting coach. And my Instagram algorithm knows me well and intentionally led me to you, and I'm so grateful. But what was the path that led you to this place?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. Yes, I think of myself still as a lawyer, even though I haven't practiced in years. I still keep my credentials up for that. But yeah, I loved being a lawyer, really loved law school. I went to Stanford and then clerked for a judge on the Ninth Circuit and had this high power type career as lawyer, like just working by that means like working a lot. And then I had my first kiddo. And so that caused such a shift for me because I found motherhood really, really hard. That was like a huge shift in identity. But there were parts of it that I just really connected with, like being able to be like silly with this kiddo. And it was interesting. So I had my first kid in my 20s. Then I started looking for different ways to either like step away from the law and like find something that was more fulfilling. And so, yeah, I went back to school. Long way of saying I went back to school for marriage and family therapy. Like
Mm.
that just became my deep interest. I had read a lot of books. It was so interesting when I first read about attachment theory, which
Oh,
your
yeah.
listeners may have heard about, right? It's so
Yeah.
buzzy. I when I first formally learned about it, I was like, oh, I thought I invented this concept. Insofar as like I had kind of noticed my kids are really seem attached to me, and
Yeah.
so yeah, like I will say I am so fascinated with family dynamics, family systems, parent-child relationships. Everything I do is very relational. It's so interesting to me in this parenting space. There's tons of clinical psychologists, which is great. And not all of them are the same. And I think they do get training in family systems and things, but I have such a relational lens, I think, because of the marriage and family therapy. And I also
Mhm.
ended up having 7 kids total. So I have a lot of children. So relationships are just my bread and butter, both at home and in the work that I do. And then I was looking to try to grow an Instagram page. I was like, I feel like I have a lot to say. And I didn't think it would become what it is, which it has 100,000 followers now, but I talked to some local parents. So I'm now parenting my fourth middle schooler. And so he was about to go into middle school. And I was talking to some of the parents of his friends, and they were really nervous about middle school. And I
Mhm.
thought, well, I'm not nervous about middle school. And I was parenting my fourth middle schooler, but I was kind of like, oh, like what is this that
Yeah.
makes it feel less scary to me? And also my oldest son, he's in college and we get along well, we're close, but he's also thriving, makes his own doctor's appointments. That's a wonderful thing about
Whoa.
kids growing up and being adults. But I thought, I think I have something here that could help other people. And so I ended up starting to post things. I developed a framework for middle school parenting. And then I kind of realized I'm kind of what I know, at least, as the only kind of solely middle school focused parent coach.
I'm just sitting here taking notes, and I wanna get to your framework, the steady and
Oh,
connected framework, but just to, explore a little bit more of your own relationship with your 7 children. Now you say you have your 4th entering middle school or in middle school. So,
mhm.
did each of your children who went through middle school, did each middle school experience for you teach you something different? Or do you find that there are some, like, universal truths, maybe both, about going
Yeah.
through middle school? I'm just curious, like, what your observations have been telling you.
Yeah. So it's really striking. My kids are all very different, as a lot of parents can attest. And so they have been different middle school experiences. But yes, like the universal truth, and that's what I ended up putting in my Steady Plus Connected Parenting framework, is the relationship is just so important. And I think this does dovetail with what I was so excited to want to mention, because it's like I see other parenting people talk about the middle school and high school years together. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's a mistake, but I think it's a missed opportunity, because middle school And by the way, you can always repair. Like high schoolers, adult children, they want to be close to their parents. But particularly in middle school, there's so many shifts going on internally for these kids, and they start to give like mixed signals. And parents often take those signals to mean, "Oh, my kid doesn't want to be close to me anymore." And that is not true. Middle
Mhm.
schoolers really, really want their parents. They want their parents to like them. They want their parents to think well of them, but they're also growing and changing. And middle school asks a lot of these kids. And so
Yes.
I think I like to focus on the relationship in middle school. Like I think that's kind of my zone of genius because when you kind of shore up the relationship there, which is not kumbaya, it's not like you're always getting along, but a relationship built on like trust and honesty, appropriate honesty and things like that, then it's going to make the high school years better, more pleasant, and safer
Mm.
because you have this child who will like likely not lie to you, come to you when things are hard, call you when the party gets out of control, stuff like that.
Right.
So that's what you have such an opportunity in the middle school years, and I just don't want parents to miss it. I'm not criticizing parents, but it's like I want to draw attention to that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds to me like these 3 years, and in our school, middle school is 3 years. I don't know, some
Okay.
schools
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
4 or 2, but, it's high stakes. To your point, this is a real foundational moment, right? What is it about middle schoolers neurologically that this is a really fertile time to get connected deeply with them? Why?
Yeah. Generally, we all know there's so many hormonal changes, surges and hormones flooding their system. And that's not my my area of expertise. But what I do know is every single one of my 4 kids during this season, and by the way, as a therapist, all the clients that I met with were like, I don't even know what I'm feeling right now. Like it's so complicated. Not only is there so much external stuff coming at them, but I think internally their internal world becomes really confusing too. And
Mhm.
that's what can be so hard because as
Yeah.
parents, we're having our own experience of it as well. We're likely in midlife. We thought we knew this kid. At this point, Farnoosh, we've been parenting for a decade, right? We're
Yeah.
tired. There's some things we feel like we've kind of dialed in and are feeling good. And then wham, middle school comes. And so I think it's interesting. And I'm not trying to like punt the question. I will say, like chemically, like that is not my area of expertise, but also I know a lot about neurodivergence. And so there's this component too of middle school's often a time where kiddos who kind of flew under the radar, maybe they have autism or ADHD, and it starts to come into view in middle school.
Mhm.
And so I even think like when I think chemically, I'm like, there's just like such a wide range of middle
Yeah.
schoolers as well. So much relational aggression is going on that can start
Yes.
young. You have a 9-year-old daughter,
We were just
but
saying, why are the middle schoolers so mean?
yeah,
This
yeah,
isn't and I keep trying to tell my son, like, this is a phase, right? Like, it's not
yeah.
to excuse the behavior, but because he said to me, he goes, "Do people bully when they're adults, like your age?"
He's so
And I
awesome. What a
he
question
seemed
to
so
ask.
worried. He was like, "Is this like how the world is?" Because this is his world, right? He goes
Yeah,
to
yeah,
school and kids are mean, and he comes home and he's like, "I'm concerned that this is like not gonna subside." I said to him, he got picked on the other day, and I said, "Can you even imagine saying the words that you heard someone say to you to someone
yeah,
else? Can you imagine you doing that?" And what pain you have to be in or what conflict you must have internally to say that stuff out loud to somebody else. And
yeah,
I'm trying to get him to not I'm trying to yeah, I guess I'm trying to get him to empathize with a bully, in
yeah,
a way that will reorient his thinking around it, so he's not like it's not about you, right? It's about this other kid who's dealing with something internally, and his
yeah,
way of acting out is unfortunately you're targeted.
yeah,
And this is just kind of like your age group. It's a messy middle. And again, not to excuse it, but I got to find these ways to like reframe it in a way so
totally.
he doesn't fight back in a way that's going to,
Will
be
go against
problematic.
his values, right?
Right.
And I think this is such Farnoosh, I wanna take a couple things out of the story that you just said and kinda, like, put them on a whiteboard here because, one, I often say the hardest thing about middle schoolers is that they're with middle schoolers all day. Like, so I think the compassion that you bring to that is so valuable for your son, to reframe it for him, like you said, "Listen, everybody's trying to figure it out." But what I always wanna pair that with is also that your son always has choices in those
Mhm,
moments too,
mhm.
because it can be pretty tricky, to just have that compassion, but also not know that you can leave or you can ask for help. And he's so lucky to have a parent that he feels comfortable going to, can talk to. And so I really want to let parents know, shore up the relationship in middle school too, because home becomes such a safe place, because
Yeah.
middle school, it's full of middle schoolers and they're also being asked a lot of. I have so much admiration for middle school teachers and administrators, but they're dealing with a lot of kids and they don't always know which kids have like ADHD or autism or dyslexia or, eating problems or anything like that. And so, or difficulties at home. And so, for your kid to be able to come home and have that be a place where they're really understood. But one thing I say to my kids a lot about friendships is, you are not anyone's entertainment. How you spoke with your son, reframing, it's amazing. And I would suggest, and maybe you've already done this, even going a step further of, yes, like have compassion for that, for the bully. And then also, like, just to be clear, like, you're not anyone's entertainment. Like, what
Right.
are your options
Right. Oh,
right
no,
there?
he did.
Because
He goes, and this has been a he grew a little bit in this area on his own, whereas
Mm,
for the first time in ever, he felt courageous enough to say to me, "I'm gonna tell on that kid." The next time he
yeah,
does that, I'm gonna tell an adult.
yeah,
Because the problem is that these incidences when they happen when no one's paying attention, right? The
of
adults are
course.
not in the
Yeah.
room, or
Yep. Yep.
they have their backs turned. Of course, like the kid's not gonna do that in front of a teacher.
Yeah.
So my son, we tell him, we're like, you have a choice. You can, you gotta like either say something back, like that's not cool, like cut it out, or then you go and tell an adult. And finally he's like, "Ugh, that's it." He
Yeah.
reached
Yeah.
his limits, and I'm like, "Good, this is a healthy reaction. How you're feeling, wanting to tell an adult, like, this is the right." I'm so glad you came to
Yeah.
that conclusion because,
Yes,
like,
right, and I think the compassion that you shared with him too can come through of like, "This isn't great for
this
this
is
kid
not
who's
cool.
bullying either."
Yeah,
Like, actually, an adult should be involved in the mix somehow, and I think the advice, like, "Oh, just let kids figure it out themselves," is so poor. It's not something I ever recommend, and of course, like, no, don't micromanage your kids' friendships. Like, I'm, like, getting a little soapboxy here because 'cause I'm like, "No, I'm not saying you micromanage your kids' friendships," but, oh my gosh, that we just let middle schoolers, like, kind of duke it out and figure it out, that will always empower bullies, which is not good for the bullies. Kids need to learn relational skills, so pull in an adult, and there's ways to pull people in where you're not like your son, and I don't think he'd do this, doesn't need to be like, "This kid sucks and he should be, like, expelled from school." No, it's like, he needs to stop.
he
Like,
needs
he
to
just needs
stop.
to
Yeah,
stop.
where earlier
So,
he was afraid to tell an authority figure because he
yeah,
thought there would be backlash, and I get that too.
that's hard.
So
Yeah,
it's a very delicate balance. But let's talk a little bit more about your framework, the Steady Plus Connected framework. What does it actually mean in practice, especially
yeah.
when you're in the middle of, let's say, a really hard parenting moment? What are the most common hard parenting moments?
Yeah, Farnoosh, watch what
So
you ask
many.
for because 'cause I'm, like, so nerdy about this, but what I set out to do is come up with a framework that kind of just has everything you would need. I mean, however you end up consuming the framework, everything you'd need to address any topic that could come up, which I know is a big thing that I'm putting forth there. But yeah, there's 4 pillars to it. And what really started me on this is, so much out there is good, but it tells parents to pause, right? If your kid is really dysregulated, really upset, pause. And I just felt like, yeah, parents would if they could, right? Like, no, really, no parents. I'm not saying there aren't any out there. I know no parents who are like, yeah, my first choice is always to just yell at my kid and scream at them and be terrible. Like, no, the majority of parents would pause if they could, but there's so much that gets kicked up for us. So I started with this first pillar. I call it the update method, and it's really helps empower parents to pause and like identify what's coming up for parents in these moments. Because typically, when we're engaging with our kids and we get triggered, right? Like we get really like, "Ooh, this big fiery response." It's typically linked to an old story, either something that happened to us when we were younger, how we don't feel worthy, we might feel rejected. And those are all really normal, valid human experiences. And so part of it is also self compassion for a parent,
Mhm,
just to like
mhm.
acknowledge to yourself, like, this doesn't feel good, but this really allows you to pause where you can say, not try to, like, I don't agree with the advice, don't take it personally. I actually say to parents, take it personally because your kid is so important to you. Whatever you're feeling, like that's a real feeling. It's very personal. If your kid's like, I hate you, I feel terrible. Like that is about me, but don't take it too seriously. Cause middle schoolers, when we talk about too, like chemically what's going on, everything, their emotions are just in and out like waves.
Right.
And so I think it trips parents up and actually ends up with parents not having the tools or the ability to pause when they try to be like, I'm just not going to take it personally. Well, you can, like, if I'm at the grocery store for Noosh and some guy's mean to me, I can not take that personally. But if my kid's saying
Yeah.
something mean to me, like, no, I want to admit to myself that hurts.
Yeah.
I could just say it privately, right? Like, I just like internally be like, "Ooh, that hurts." But like, I'm pretty sure, based on the pattern of our relationship, I'm pretty sure my kid doesn't hate me, right? And
Yeah.
so that's kind of the first thing I tried to do. Like, I set out to like solve a problem. So that's the first pillar.
Yeah. Do you do you communicate to your kid, "Hey, that hurt."
I do. I do now. I will say. I think initially when people implement this, when I'm taking people through it, I would say admit it to yourself. And you could even talk to your partner about it or your mom or something like that. Just be like, gosh, like when little Sammy says that, like that just I feel terrible inside. And then there's something about that, right? Which I think is therapeutically like it makes sense, but there's something about like just really being honest with yourself that just turns down the heat of the
Yeah.
situation, and you're able to be like, "Yeah, that really hurts because I really care about
Yeah.
this kid. This kid's
Right.
so important to me. Of course it hurts." But you know what? There's a lot going on for them. Doesn't excuse it, right? But like there's a lot and it's just whew. So now for me, I've used this enough that and as my kids grow, because I have high schoolers now and a college kid, that I can trust myself to be sometimes I'll be like, "Oh, like that hurts, but
Yeah.
you're important to me." That's my favorite line actually to just say, "You're really important to me. This
Uh,
relationship's really important, and I wanna figure this out."
you have
So
this gift, Bridget, of knowing what to say
oh,
to
thanks for new
schoolers. You do. You have this way of giving parents the language that they need to really connect with their 12-year-old, 13-year-old. What do you think are some of the most important things parents should, you just gave one great
Yeah,
example, communicate to your kids? Like, you're important to me, that they need to hear more often because we tend to do a lot of the like, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. I've started to say things like, are you proud of yourself? You should be.
yeah,
Because it's not about my pride, right? It's about
yeah,
they need to find that pride in themselves. And I think I needed a lot of that from my parents growing up, their sort of validation. And I think, while of course that's important, it kind of what got lost in that was like the importance for me to feel good about myself and source my
yeah.
sense of self-worth from internally. So would love any other kind of catchphrases or
Oh,
sayings like,
absolutely. First, Farnoosh, you're brilliant because what you're doing with your son when you're like, "Well, are you proud of you?" Right? Like, kinda offering him that, and this is the 4th pillar of steady plus connected parenting, which I call curious relational parenting. You're helping him walk around in his internal world, and this is middle school's great. These kids are so smart, and they're so insightful, right? There's a lot going on, and so I like to think of parents as partnering with them to help them get curious about themselves. And that's
yeah.
what you're doing right there. And that's such a gift that will compound, right? Like he might be like, I don't know, mom, or I'm not, or whatever. Like, because a lot of parents will say, well, Bridget, like you give all these questions, and my kid's like, I don't know. That's fine. That's fine. Because what you've done there is one, I would bet that your kid is thinking about it later. Right.
Mhm.
And we're using the example of like, are you proud about yourself? And I bet it catches him a bit later to be like, Mom asked me that. But Farnoosh, look what else you're doing. You are telling him, like, you're worth getting to know.
Mm.
Oh my god, I just put my hand on my heart 'cause I'm just like, this is so valuable, right? Like, how many
Yeah.
of us as adults try to achieve and overdo and be perfect and all of these things, and just, like, this message that you're giving your son, and I bet you give your daughter too, of like, "I wanna know more about you, I'm curious." Like, yeah, like, I'm
Mhm.
proud of you, but, like, I wanna know how you feel. That is something like, put that in your pocket to your son,
Yeah.
right? Like, just like and that is so protective, and so what I wanna offer parents is I always say there's 2 questions that all middle schoolers are silently asking as they're navigating the world. "Do you like me? And will you come back to me?" And I'll just expand on those a bit. So, they're asking really everyone in the world, like, as they're walking down the hallway, they're like, "Am I likable? Do people like
Mm.
me?" They're very much, like, being perceived, right?
Right.
And that just the heat on that is so turned up in middle school. Throughout elementary school, they're very aware, but I mean, we all know like the self-consciousness comes in. So they're feeling, do you like me? And then the do you come back? Will you come back for me is like, if I mess up, right? Because middle schoolers mess up a lot because they're growing and changing and trying new things and being asked to do really hard stuff. Like, will people come back to me? Will they give me grace, essentially, right? Can I mess up here?
Right.
And maybe I should say it that way. So they're asking that of the world, but they're really asking that of their parents. And so
Mhm.
the more you can tell your kid, like, gosh, buddy, I like you so much. That's so cool how your brain works.
Yeah.
And also, if you guys have a disagreement, a rupture, whatever, that's okay that you'll always come back. And I know we talk a lot about repair. That's another pillar of repair, but it's also just nothing you could do will push me away. I think of it like I will always come to the mat for you. Like I will always come back. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. I'm
Right.
not going to shame you, right? There's some silence that can happen in families where we just pretend like it didn't happen. And that, when I think I'm a trauma therapist, I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I really specialized in trauma as well as neurodivergence. And when I would sit across from people and we would work through their trauma, I used a modality called EMDR, but we'd work through their trauma. And Farnoosh, it was so striking to me that it was rarely about the event itself, about the 2 hour, 10-minute event, like whatever. It was about the relationships afterwards and before. Did anyone talk to you about what happened? Did they try to gaslight you, right? Did they try to talk you out of it? Did anyone show compassion for you? Those kind of things. And it just really blew my mind as a trauma therapist because I thought the stories that we form in these years, and particularly in these middle school years. So essentially, when you come back to your kid after you guys have had a relational break and you own your part, and then you start to help them, and this is part of my repair method too, you start to help them own their part in it, then we're talking the same language here,
Yeah.
right? And they don't have to say, "My mom got mad at me and I am bad." And so many adults have carried that in, and then, and they act out in different ways because of that, but
Right.
so many of
Right.
us grew up just feeling like we were bad, and I think our parents would just be horrified to know that. They'd be like,
Mm.
"Oh my gosh, I didn't intend that," but they never kind of overtly said, like, "You're such a cool kid. I like you so much." And often they ignored the ruptures and things like that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of ruptures, phones and
Yeah.
screens are a big battleground in, I would think, every middle school household at this juncture. What is your take on how parents should approach this, should not approach this?
Yeah. Well,
Are
I
you a
think
wait till 8th grade?
I
You know that campaign,
yeah,
right?
I understand that campaign. Yeah, well, and I live on the West Coast. I think that might be more of an East Coast thing, although, of course, we've all heard about it. Because I do notice a lot of the parenting advice coming out of the East Coast is a more strict, more stringent, more prescriptive, I would say.
Mhm.
And so, again, I'm always looking from a relational lens. I work with families where kids are not on screens and feel disconnected from their kids are sneaking it, they're going over to friends' houses, seeing things they wouldn't want to see, they're lying to their parents, right? And I'm not criticizing these parents. Like, parents are really, really trying so hard. But I think you've just got a different set of problems, especially if your kid goes to school. They likely have a Chromebook. They likely have to submit assignments electronically. So you can't really get away from tech.
Yeah.
I also know families that have looser controls or maybe even no controls on tech, and they have a relationship where kids tell their parents a lot and parents help them work through things. And so, absolutely, I think that there should be intention about it. I think relationally, it's really good to be open with your kids and again help them walk around in their internal world. Like, what do screens do to you, essentially? Like, what does it feel like when you have to get off? Because that is actually a big place that I work with parents. Is they're like, I don't mind them on their screen, but they won't get off, right? And
Right.
especially if a kid's neurodivergent, there's that. Like, that is very hard to switch tasks. But we start helping our kids get the language for, like, yeah, like, how do you feel when you're on it too much? And it's not shaming them, it's helping them figure out, like, what feels good for me, what doesn't. But that's what I always want to offer to parents, is the one thing that will keep your kids safe online. Like, so many, especially parents of boys, are like, I don't want my kid to look at pornography. It's so sad. Like, these kids are targeted.
Yeah, and
But
you can't unsee that stuff. It's
yeah,
just it happens and you're just I don't even know what you do
yeah.
from there. Like,
Well, and I think that, well, okay, because my oldest is 20 and your oldest is 12. So we're in at different places insofar as, I'll say this, Farnoosh, like, I really had to ask myself, and this was years ago, do I want to make sure he doesn't see it, right? Which is more prescriptive, right? Then we, like, lock everything down and drill, like,
yeah.
ask him, like, what have you seen and stuff like that. Or if he is exposed to it, for him to come to me, and for him to also be able to say, like, hey, dude, I don't want to see that. Or, like, if he does get drawn into it, right? Because that's hormonally really hard. I think boys can feel a lot of shame because maybe it flashes on the screen. They do get kind of, and like, have we had these talks about, hey, you're not a bad person, but there's things that aren't healthy for your brain. And really, unfortunately, there's companies that target kids your age. That's terrible, and like being able to have those conversations. But that was kind of the dichotomy like I had of like, do I want him just to not see it? And then I, drive myself crazy trying to lock it down. Or do
Right.
I want him to, if he sees it, come to me? And so, but by the way, like, I also don't want him to see it, right? Like, I
Right,
do have
like,
a
do your
13-year-old son that
best to try to
yeah,
put the parental controls on things, but yeah, things they're freaking sneaky, and yeah, he could go to a friend's house and, all bets are off. So you're right. Yeah, making sure that there is that pipeline, that open
yeah,
dialogue ability to him to say something and to have those conversations ahead of time,
yeah, yeah.
like
When
this.
I wanna offer this for a new with my 13-year-old, he doesn't really mind if I share about him. I don't talk about him that much, but there was a situation in the fall where I asked him regularly about pornography, like, "What have you seen?" Like, every few weeks. And he was like, "Mom, that's so awkward." And I had to talk to him and say, "That's the cost of access to your iPad." And he has a computer too. Like,
Yeah.
so and I said, "But I don't wanna make you feel awkward. I don't wanna shame you, so, like, please tell me, like, how I can navigate this better, but I do need to talk to you about this because you do get targeted, unfortunately. You're a kid, there's stuff that's not healthy for your brain.
Right.
I can't stop the outside world from trying to get into your line of sight. So I need to be able to ask you, like, what have you seen? And to me as a parent, when he gave me that feedback of like, Mom, you're making it awkward, I had to sit with it for Farnoosh and be like, yeah, like maybe I could pay attention to like time and place when I ask him and like how I say it. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
can also adjust because I'm in a relationship with him. He's so important to me. But also I just said to him, I was like, buddy, that's the cost of being online is that we
Yeah.
have to be able to have these talks. And he
Yeah.
really took that very well, and I was glad. So that,
That's a
so when I
fair way to talk about
yeah,
it. Yeah, it's like
yeah,
you want this thing, but these are the rules, I suppose, or like, the conduct that we have to follow if we're gonna, give you this computer in your pocket,
right, yes, yes,
essentially. I do have a few money questions
sure.
after all.
Yes,
But,
yes,
this is also a time of a child's life, an adolescent's life, where they want for many things, and the
yeah,
wants get more expensive, right? It's not just like a doll. They want we just talked about phones. They want the right clothing, apparel. They want, go to a concert with a friend, and so sports events tickets are expensive. I fight this a lot because, intellectually, I know that it's not a good idea
yeah,
to give in to every desire ask. They do earn an allowance, my son and my daughter, but it's not much. And, that's not going to pay for like sneakers anytime soon. So, how do we handle the pressure around the material desires that are like amplified in this age group? But at the same time, how do we balance that with like making sure that they feel secure? Because there's a part of that like, I mean, I remember being 12 and like having the right jeans and how it just like made me feel so much more accepted. Probably not the healthiest, but a little bit of that is not toxic. I think that there's a
yeah.
balance.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. Yeah, and if your family can afford that too, I think it can bring you as the parent some joy too of being able to offer that like, oh my gosh, like Lululemon leggings. Like I'm just like, oh my gosh, you're gonna grow. Like these are prime growing years, and kids are asking for that. Starbucks is so expensive. I mean,
Oh yeah.
marketers have made this impossible for parents. And yes, like being online, YouTube and social media, it's marketing to these kids all the time. So I have so much compassion for parents, including myself, you obviously too. Like this is a really, really tough thing to navigate. And so this is where I really suggest parents lean into their values. And so I with money, I mean, similar to tech. And by the way, I do feel like in the tech conversation, we never talk about how expensive phones are. Like for me, with my 13-year-old son, I was more like, buddy, I'm worried you're going to lose this.
Yes.
Like, what?
It
So,
breaks, you lose it. Yeah, I mean, we're already we don't have he doesn't have a phone yet, but I'm like, just so you know, like if it breaks, if you lose it, that's it. Like
yeah,
I
yeah.
think we'll get Apple protection, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's coming out of your pocket.
Right. Yeah. Like it's a big deal. So when I work with parents about money, I talk about getting clear on your values. And that I would think Farnoosh, you and I are probably very aligned with that because it's so
Mhm.
important. Like people have different financial goals. And something that I worry about a bit is that kids these days too are like they're going to concerts so early, and like that was something I did when I was 20 and it was a
I
big deal.
know.
Like there's so much excitement now that delay, like being able to delay gratification really is not happening. And with that also is parents, it's exhausting to be asked every day because, and especially for neurodivergent kids, they will ask over and over again. And with neurodivergent kids, there's also the dopamine component of like
Right.
if they're feeling kind of down, like a new thing does give a boost. And it's a social thing. So I think parents really are having to navigate this the best they can. I think a budget can work for some kids, whereas like an allowance for a kid with ADHD needs a lot more structure, and a lot more like parental involvement of like, oh,
Mhm.
like, are you sure you want to spend on that? Or like how you, because kids with
Forced
ADHD,
savings,
yeah,
I think, is what we
yeah,
have
and
decided.
saving.
Our son has ADHD. Our
Okay.
daughter is more is neurotypical, and
Yeah.
she also like, I think your money personality, it does evolve as you get older, but there's also you're kinda coming into the world with a few presets, I think, and
Yeah.
my son is, like, definitely the spender,
Yeah.
and my daughter likes to spend, but also will save. Like, she doesn't
Yeah.
need to be prompted to save, whereas I think for my son, we have to get to a point where we're like, "Okay, here's your allowance, automatically 10, 15% gets banked,
Yeah.
and here's your cash. And you can use the savings, once a year or something if you want." I don't know, just so that he has something to work towards. Because
Yeah.
he's literally asking me for advances on his allowance so he can spend more this week, and but yeah, you're right. Every kid is different. So we
Well, and
have a
I
lot of allowance conversations on this show,
totally.
and there's no one size fits all, not even close.
Well, and that's where I think we can really look at this as a training ground for Noosh. And because you can probably extrapolate this to, as an adult, him taking out loans that he can't pay back and things like that. And so I think this is great. I would suggest with parents, if you have the financial flexibility, to also let them make some mistakes sometimes,
Yes.
right? And really take shame out of it. But yeah, it has to be, we need to learn about how money feels for you, like what it does. And that's really, when I was growing up, that was not a discussion at all. It was so structured of like, you are a good person if you save, you are a bad person if you overspend. And there's so much dopamine implicated in all of this that just really helping your kids be aware of what's drawing them in. And yeah, occasionally like a nice pair of leggings, maybe that feels like a nice birthday gift or something like that. But also, I think just letting them know what the cost of that is, of like, you should be able to wear whatever you feel good in. And, it just opens up these conversations. But the parents I see who navigate this the most successfully acknowledge the cost to their kid of not spending, right? So it's like often we're like, you don't need that. Don't buy it. That's a waste of money. But we don't say, but what's it gonna be like not to have that, right? And
Yeah.
so that's a helpful conversation. It doesn't mean you have to change your mind, but I always recommend that parents think about, really in a lot of situations, what's it gonna cost your kid to not get the thing? And just being, you don't need to change your mind, but just being acknowledging of.
Yes, that's such a great point, to know that, first of all, you have choices and these are the trade-offs. If you get this, here's what it means. If you don't get this, here's what it means. I
Yeah.
think you're right. And that's where as adults we can really sort of guide them. So lastly, there are so many quote unquote investments that I think as parents we provide our children, and
Mhm.
that's monetary investments as well as time investments, energetic investments. And we don't maybe think about it as an investment. We just think of it as like being there for my kid,
Yeah.
doing what my kid needs. But for families where, budgets are limited, time is limited, maybe you're
Yeah.
working 2 jobs, 3 jobs, you have multiple kids. So maybe, you can't be as present as you would like for every single child. What are in your practice, what do you see as some of the best quote unquote investments that parents provide their kids? And it can be something monetary and it can be something not. Like, I mean, you could even say, like, spending this much time with your
Yeah.
kids, if it's intentional, these are the things to do. I just kind of want to understand a little bit more what you're seeing as far as the best ways that parents can show up and provide for their kids right now in these years.
Well, Farnoosh, that's such a great question and a really timely one, because all parents are trying to do a great job. They have goals for their kids. They want to support their kids to, do better than they did. And they want to give them the world. And some people actually have a lot of extra income, and then some people it's very limited. And so it's hard too to figure out where to put your money. And then you are wise to mention time too. So the way I think about it is really getting clear on values, because so much of what we're told is prescriptive. And it was so important to me that my parents showed up at every game. But like, and I'm not saying that for myself, but like someone will tell me that. But like maybe their parent like emotionally really didn't talk to them about very much, like didn't talk to them when they got their period or something like that. And so I think as a parent, you really need to think, how do I want my child to feel about their relationship with me? And not that it's always smooth sailing, but just what kind of mom do I want to be? And
Mm.
knowing that no matter what, all of us as adults, if we have a closer relationship with our kids are going to say, like, you didn't show up to all my hockey games or something like that. And
Yeah.
we're going to be oh, they're disappointed in me, or, whatever comes up for us. But you know what? I really like lived within my values there, which was that I couldn't, like, I had to work. You don't need to explain it
You're
away,
not
but
gonna
like,
they're not gonna be 100, you're not gonna get an A plus.
yeah,
You just accept that as parents, like,
I always think about, like, I just want to parent in a way that is what I would consider in integrity for me.
yeah.
And so that even means like if I get mad at my kids and I raise my voice, I don't shame my kid. Like, I don't name call. Like, that's really important to me. Sometimes I will raise my voice and I will go back and repair, because I'm like, I don't want you to feel like I'm trying to shut you down, or like, however I'll explain that. But I'm not a bad person for raising my voice. Some people do name call. That I would suggest getting out of that habit if people are doing that, but also like, really having compassion for yourself as a parent. And I guess that's where people say, like, oh, I'm just doing the best I can. But also doing the best you can at all times is exhausting. Sometimes we just do what we can do and then we repair
Right.
the rest. And so I think the best investments, I'm not even answering your question, so I do want to get at that. I guess for news, maybe you can tell, but I'm kind of like, create a home where you're honest with your kids. Create a home where they can ask you questions and call you out on stuff. Like, that's
Yeah.
a good investment. You as a parent being kind to yourself, and I'm not talking about self-care and a spa day or anything like that, but just being kind to yourself of like, this is
Mhm.
hard. Sometimes sometimes I don't know what to do.
So
Yeah.
one of the first I said to my son the other day, and I was like, "I don't know if this was a good idea," but I said to him, "I'm having a really hard time, parenting you right now,
Mm,
and I just don't know. You help me out. You need to help me out. Like, what do you need from me? Because like
yeah,
nothing is working. You don't like
yeah,
my ideas. Do you just want me to stay here and like listen? Do you just want me?" And I think I read this somewhere.
yeah,
Sometimes kids just want you to be there. You don't have to go into problem solving mode all the time. And I think that was such a relief for me to
yeah,
hear. Like, okay, good. I can just be quiet and still, and while he's having his blow up and meltdown about something that happened at school, I can just be like, "Yeah, that sucks," you know? Like, but
yeah.
maybe also asking him, like, what do you need from me right now? I wanna help."
I think that's brilliant. Yeah, I
'Cause
think
I
that
don't know, I
is a
actually don't
great
know.
message.
Like, help me out. Help me be a better
Yeah.
parent.
Well, I think that I mean, I think you're such a good parent, Farnoosh, because
No, 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 this is not me
you
bragging at
like to
all, like,
him. Oh,
I
yeah, yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
I feel
Yes.
like the number of
Yeah.
times I've said to my husband, "I feel like we are failing this child." I really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, well, and I think when I because you did mention that your kiddo has ADHD, I really bring that to the forefront too when I'm talking to people if they have a neurodivergent kid, because you are parenting your child in a world that was not designed for his brain.
No.
And so I really take a social justice lens to it as well, which is like, it's hard to parent. It's hard for him. And that doesn't mean we don't have boundaries and he just does whatever he wants, but it's hard for him to navigate this world at this age. And I think it won't always be like impossible for him, but, and then it's hard for you as parents because there's no rule book for this, and he is different than you. And so what would
Mhm.
work for you, won't necessarily work for him. But I think what I would suggest for Noosh is defining, like, you and your husband defining, like, well, what are our values here, right? Like, what kind of parents do we want to be? And like, what would look like good parenting in this season? He's clearly coming to you when things are hard.
Yep.
If he can give you feedback, I do think that is a really,
Oh,
really
he does,
important
yeah.
part. Yeah, you're like, he definitely does,
I
Bridget.
didn't like it when you said that thing. I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's actually, I do this thing where if I'm upset with his sister and he's in the room, I'd be like, "You guys just," and he'd be like, "Whoa, whoa, I am not in, why are you saying you guys? You're talking to Colette. Like, you should say Colette.
Oh,
I'm like, "You're right. You're right."
yeah.
But I feel like, yeah, he calls me out. I'm like, "You're right. This isn't about you. This is about her, and I'm making it about both of you, and in this moment, it's just about her." And, he's
Yeah.
like, "That does not make me feel good. I had no
Yeah.
play in this. I had no hand in that, mom." I'm like, "Okay,
Yes.
okay, that's fair. That's fair."
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that when I think about investments, I think so probably like an investment as a parent in your own mental health. I'm so therapist to say that, but truly like having a place where you can like say to say to your husband, and maybe you have a therapist or you have friends or parents that you talk to, and you're just like, I feel like I'm really messing this up. Right. And just being really kind to yourself. Because when you look at the totality of who you are as a parent, you're not. And this is
Yeah.
just hard. But I think investing in that so you can take feedback. If feedback is given too harshly, that you can, stay steady, but also say, like, hey, like, ouch, that hurts. And like,
Yeah.
we're important to each other. We need to figure this out. Right. Like,
We
help.
need each
Yeah.
other, right,
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
And
yeah,
I will regularly say that to my kids. We are important to each other. I will definitely say, like, you're really important to me, but I know I'm important to my kids. I know I mean something to them because of who I am, but also because of the position I hold in their life. Parents are incredibly important to kids. They have such an impact on them lifelong. And not that I don't, there's a power differential here. I do not expect my kids to change to like help my feelings or whatever, but like we are in a relationship. So I
right,
wouldn't be doing my job if I'm just kind of your punching bag or, and it's like time and place of like figuring out that because sometimes kids are just in a crabby mood, but other times it's like they're going to have a significant other likely someday. They'll have friendships, they'll have roommates.
yes, yes,
We live together. We're important to each other.
communication, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think about that. That comes from my lawyer days. Like it's definitely, a therapeutic thing too. But I think
Advocating
that,
for yourself, right.
yeah,
No, you're 1,000% right about that. I mean, gosh, if kids can get that sort of skill set as early on as possible, I mean, they're leaps and bounds ahead of most people, most adults.
yeah, yeah.
Bridget KerMorris, thank you so much. I knew this was gonna be a really important conversation, and, like I said, you're doing God's work. This is a
Right.
really underserved community, I will say, 'cause I am in it, and I wanna encourage everybody to check out you have a new podcast.
It's called Middle Years, Bridget KerMorris. It's a listener question every week, and I just go through it using my framework. And I'm recording one today about friendships. Like I love it because it lets me just like write out all my thoughts and on that. But yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with that.
Good. Fun is important, as audience has heard me say repeatedly. And then you also have a survival toolkit called the Ultimate Middle School Survival Toolkit. We'll link to that
Well, thank you.
because, yeah, I'm ahead of. So I have these girlfriends, and they have kids who are not in middle school yet, but I have the middle schooler, and I'm like,
Mm,
I will be here for you. I am like learning now so that y'all can maybe have it a little easier. So you're welcome. But
yes.
yeah, this I'm gonna be paying it forward. I will be paying it forward. I look forward to that. Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome.